Well, hello. Today's devotion is for Wednesday, the second of November, and we are in Genesis chapter 47. We're going to be looking at verses 1 through 12, and then also verses 27 through 31. So the Word of God says, Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds, and all that they possess, has come from the land of Canaan, and indeed they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, What is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, We have come to dwell in the land, because your servants have no pasture for their flocks. For the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and your brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, How old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph situated his father and his brothers and gave them possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all of his father's households with bread, according to the number of their families. Verse 27. So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 70 years. He lived there 70 years, so the length of Jacob's life was 17 years. Excuse me. My eyes are failing me just a little. He lived there 17 years, so the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. And when the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, Now if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And he said, I will do as you have said. Then he said, Swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. So Joseph has moved his father Israel in, along with his brothers and all their families, along with their livestock and all their belongings. And God has given them a place in the land of Egypt, a place called Goshen. And God blesses him there. And we know this was a temporary place. God had told Israel when he stopped at Beersheba that he would be there for 400 years. God would bless him. He'd have a great nation there that would grow up out of there. But Israel also knows that he will die there. And so after 17 years of living there, he brings Joseph in and says, Listen, make a promise, make a vow that you won't leave my body here. You won't bury me here. I want to be buried with my fathers back in Canaan. And so this is the account. Now, as we think about this, what application, what is the lesson? If there's a lesson that can be learned from this, what is the lesson? And I think the lesson, we can take a look at the specs, but there's not a sin that's mentioned. I don't know of a real, there's not a promise, not necessarily even a principle. So as we look at the example of Israel, there's no command to be given. And really, what's to be the thing to be thankful for? There's always something to be thankful for. I mean, they've been transplanted to Egypt. They've been provided for. They didn't die from the famine, and now they're in Egypt, and they're under the protection of Joseph, and they're allowed to flourish. And in history, and God had already told them they would be there for 400 years. So think about then, what do we learn from Israel, from Jacob? Is that even though he's in Egypt, even though he's dwelling in Egypt, he's not at home in Egypt. Even though he's physically in Egypt, his heart is in Canaan. And I think that there's a lesson for us there. As we think about the example of Jacob here, it, I think, reflects a little bit of our attitude toward heaven. There have been many songs written about heaven. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Beulah Land is a song that I've sung 100 times if I've sung it once. And I think about the promise of heaven, and even though we live here, heaven's our real home. Even though we dwell here on earth, we know that this dwelling is just temporary. But we have a home in the heavens that is eternal. And that's where our heart is. And that's where Israel's heart was. Yes, he was with his family. Yes, he was with his children and his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Who knows how many generations are born when you live to be 147 years old. He's got so many kids running around, he can't possibly know all their names. And yet he's worried about one thing. Don't leave me here. My home is in Canaan. And this world is not our home. Our home is in heaven. And I think that's the lesson I get from this. That's the point. As I think about this passage, I think about Jacob. I think about his request that Joseph promised not to leave his body here in Egypt, but to take him to be buried with his fathers. It's just, to me, a picture of our need to be homesick for heaven. So, really, that's all I have today. As I am sitting here in Monte, in front of the lake here in Laguna del Monte, watched the sun go down just a little bit ago. It's been a gorgeous day here in Argentina. I've been reminded of the beauty of God's creation and the beauty of this world, and yet it's not home. Still think of heaven. and the reunion that we'll have with our loved ones one day. That's all I have for today. Hope you have a blessed day, and we will see you again tomorrow.